bằng tiếng Anh. Quý vị nào có con nhỏ, em nhỏ nào đó muốn nghe giảng pháp bằng tiếng Anh thì lên hồi, còn quý vị nghe thì nghe, đừng có nói chuyện quá lớn, thành ra Thiện Long không có thể giảng được. Xin cảm ơn quý vị.
Okay, we're going to roughly get started with the English portion of today's lecture. Again, keep in mind that like this lecture is designed for kids, but also possibly adults to access the content and the material of Buddhism and the practice in English. Yeah, it's about access, right? Because no one ever said that like, oh, you don't speak Vietnamese, so you can't understand Buddhism. For those who do, you know, for me, like growing up, I was sat in like this lecture with the monk, and he always spoke in Vietnamese. And a lot of the times the stuff was like a little bit too complicated, a little bit over my head, and he was using like high level like Vietnamese vocabulary that I had no idea what was going on. And so part of this entire project is so that you guys, if you do understand English very well and at a high level, you can access like the more higher level concepts and notions about Buddhism, right? And very quickly, just to let you guys know that like these English lectures happen like the first 2 Sundays of every month. So you can expect to find, if you are interested in learning more about Buddhism and more about like why are you here to begin with. Like just because your parents bring you to the temple doesn't make you a Buddhist, right? It could be, but it could not, you know, it's up to your interpretation. But I think really practicing this religion is really about like, hey, getting to know more about the religion, getting to know more about yourself, okay? So I just wanted to very quickly, because this is going to get, this lecture is going to be split up into 2 pieces, right? First, I'll just continue my last week's lecture, and then I'll talk about like the significance of today in the ceremony, because normally like this service every Sunday, right? And there's like a handful of people who show up, but then today's a special holiday, so it's like, why are you guys here today, A, and B, why so many other people here today? But, alright, let's just dive into what I was talking about last week, because I do want to wrap it up. Last week we started to talk about the 3 Dharma seals, okay? I think the name is not important, the concept is very important, and the 2 concepts that we talked about was impermanence and non-self. Think carefully, like impermanence, very high level vocabulary, not something that even if I told you in English what impermanence was, like would it register for you right away, right? Impermanence is basically this idea that like nothing lasts forever, right? You look at yourself, you look at the human body, you start off really young, your skin is really tight, and you know, you look beautiful. And then 30, 40 years down the line, what happens? You begin to get really wrinkly, and then you notice like, yo, there's a very big difference between young people, old people, right? Nothing lasts forever. And that's just a human body. We know it's not permanent. Your body's constantly growing. Well, what about rocks? You would think, hey, a rock lasts for a pretty long time, right? But when you think about it, rocks don't live forever either. They go through the same cycle, like a rock cycle as well. And so, really the idea of like Buddhism and the practice is this idea that like, there's always 2 truths, right? It's like the way that you see the world and the way that the world actually is, the way that reality actually exists. And so, really, the more that you put in time and practice, the better you get to see reality for what it is, right? And oftentimes we are, to some extent, ignorant of what it is that what it was that the Buddha saw, and what was the reality that he was describing, right? And so, yes, so that's the idea. So that's impermanence. Impermanence is like nothing lasts forever. And the second concept that we talked about last week was non-self. And non-self is this idea that hey, everything is connected, right? Every single little thing is connected. People are connected, even items are connected. And so those two things lead into the last thing, which is nirvana, which is the third dharma seal. But let me very quickly talk about how I'm thinking about this, right? Because when you think about it, how do you represent something that represent this idea that everything is connected, right? Well, I mean, a popular image would be a circle, because when you think about a circle, every little thing is connected within that circle. How do you represent when everything is impermanent? Well, within that circle, you show the process of birth and death, birth and death, birth and death, right? So here, you have these two notions, these two concepts of impermanence and non-self, and how, hey, you have a circle, and you have basically a circle of life of birth and death, birth and death, birth and death, right? And this is quite a popular thing, quite a popular idea within the Buddhist tradition. You do have this cycle, and within this idea of Buddhism, we do believe in rebirth, right? And so you die and then you get reborn either into this plane of existence, or as an animal, or as something else towards heaven, towards hell, etc., etc., etc. But the idea of Buddhism is that we're constantly stuck in this cycle of birth, right? Death and rebirth, and death and rebirth again, right? So how do you peel yourself away and actually escape this? And that's the idea of, and before we even talk about that, if you are in this cycle of birth and death, there's actually a lot of suffering that goes on. Between birth and death, there is a lot of suffering, right? You get sick, you get into old age, you get hurt. There's always constant suffering. And the basic tenets of Buddhism says that a lot of our suffering comes from attachment, especially to material things and fame and fortune, etc., right? Because that's, as we know, or maybe you'll find out one day, it's not the key to happiness and peace and tranquility and stuff like that. Okay. So you have these two dharma seals of impermanence and non-self. And so you have the third one, which is nirvana. And we've heard of this popular concept of nirvana, but the question is, to what extent do you guys know what nirvana even means, right? What is nirvana? And when I heard this definition, I'm like, what are they talking about? But here's the actual definition. I mean, it's not official, but this is the concept of nirvana. It's the complete silencing of concepts. This is a very, very high level definition of what nirvana is, and it's very difficult to describe. And so I'll take the next maybe 5 more minutes to see if I can get to that level, right? Of describing what is nirvana, what does it mean to silence concepts, right? And they also say it's the ground of being, and I want to unpack that a little bit more. But when we think about let's just say the cycle of birth and death, right? One visual example of this cycle of birth and death could be waves in an ocean. Have you ever watched waves in oceans before? From the distance, these waves, right? First you don't see it. And then the closer as time goes on, they start forming a little bit, undulating. And then they form, right? You get a big wave. and it looks like circular, and they crash. And when they crash to the shore, the waves just die. And then, in the distance again, you see a wave forming again, right? And so you notice, like, this picture, have this picture in your head. Waves being created, crashing, and then dying, right? And then being created again. It's like this rough and tumble. And waves can be very violent too, right? Waves are really powerful, they're really strong, they grab people from the sea or the shore and they back them around, etc., etc. So keep this analogy in mind, because then I want to ask you this question. What is a wave? All this notion of crashing and being born and then crashing and dying, etc., as a wave. What is a wave to a water molecule? What is this wave to the water itself? And when you think about this and you take time to really think about this analogy, water is the wave, right? And so the idea is that this rough and tumbleness of a wave crashing actually has no meaning to a water molecule itself, right? And so I'm trying to collect all these ideas together with this idea that to a water molecule, the crash of a wave is non-existent. And to some extent, within this practice, you're trying to get to that same level of understanding. Can you understand that the crashing and the creation and the crashing of waves don't really matter? And the parallel to that is this idea of birth and death. Can you guys get to the level of understanding that says that birth and death is actually irrelevant? It's that we don't actually go through birth and death. It's a very fascinating and difficult concept to grasp. But I would argue, and I thought about what's a really interesting example that gives you perspective into how we can be like a water molecule compared to a wave, right? And here's the idea that I thought of. Interesting fact. What if, well, there's a phenomenon happening right now that you guys have no idea that's happening, right? We are so oblivious to it, and yet it does happen. And that's this idea that the Earth is rotating, okay? The Earth is rotating on an axis. And you could say oh yeah, we know that because we see day and night. But when things rotate, it rotates at a certain speed, right? The question is, well, let me tell you how fast we're rotating. They've done the math. It's rotating 1,000 miles per hour. Or that's about 460 meters per second. So here we are. We're on this Earth. And if you sit still, you think to yourself, everything is still. And yet at the same time, this body, this Earth, is moving at 1,000 miles per hour. Interesting thought experiment. What do you think happens when the Earth stops spinning? Do you guys know what happens to the human body, to everything that we've created in this Earth when the Earth stops spinning? Well, it's Newton's first law, right? An object in motion continues to be in motion, and object at rest stays at rest. Well, if you think about it, if the Earth stops spinning, all of a sudden everybody's going to be flying at about 1,000 miles per hour. Now that's not the only speed at which we are moving in this solar system, right? We're also rotating around the sun. And we're rotating around the sun at around 30 kilometers per second, or 67,000 miles per hour. That's a lot. Imagine if the Earth stopped rotating around the sun. What do you think happens? Well, a lot of things happen, right? It's people, things are going to be flying on this earth. So, bringing this back, why did I even bring up this example? Well, we can't sense this rotation and this revolution around the sun by being on Earth. So to what extent can you guys get to that level of understanding as a wave? Like, a water molecule doesn't sense the crash, the creation and the crash of a wave. So the final level is, can you guys get to this level where you deeply understand that there is no such thing, there's no notion of birth and death, right? Yeah, and like, not being attached to this idea. And I'll flesh this topic out more because I have about like 12 minutes left. But the way that I see Nirvana, right, and it's an interesting term that gets like thrown around without like, maybe like an academic understanding of it. But this is like my understanding from what I've been doing. So I see it as like the peeling away of like notions and concepts until you get to this idea of no concept, right? And it's only in that space that you actually find like peace and joy, etc. And like there's no suffering. And so one concrete example that I can give is, let's just say you're angry. You're very angry one day, or very sad, or very happy. Any emotions that you feel, right? If you like find yourself in a state of excitement one way or the other, and you close your eyes, right? And you begin to meditate, and you focus simply on your breath. You begin to notice something. And let's take the example of anger, because I think it's particularly strong. If you're really, really angry at something, your mind cannot multitask. So really, when you're not meditating and you're just focusing just on your breath, you can only concentrate on your breath. And by doing so, you're really able to peel away at the anger. Because when you're meditating, there can't be anger because you're focusing just on your breath, right? And when you get to that level of being able to do that, you're able to understand that, oh, you're peeling away these concepts and you're finding peace and joy. And the final analogy that I'm trying to, that I thought about for this idea of nirvana, of like peeling away concepts, and how the more that you're able to understand like reality and peel and get to this notion of silencing of concepts or not acknowledging it, the more peace and joy that you arrive at. It's this idea of, let's just say, people, right? People and concepts. And I thought, think about all the divisions that happen within this world, right? The divisions of just like, racism and just a lot of like discrimination, right? Where does this all come from? Well, it's because too many people identify with the self, right? They look too much, they take too much stock in who they are. But let's just imagine people, and imagine if, let's just say, everybody's like the same height. Then there's no more distinction in height. Then let's just think about if everybody was the same race. Let's just say they're all gray or something, same color, gray. Then there would be no more racism because you're peeling away this idea. Let's just say everybody has like one gender, whatever gender or sexuality it is. Then there's none of that. And then everybody looks the same. Let's just say everybody's like a box or something. Then there's no more of that. And if you peel away every single piece of identity that we have, what are we? Right? And to what extent are we comparing ourselves anymore if we peel away each piece of identity? And if you're not comparing yourself with other people, how much more peaceful and serene would your existence be, right? How much peaceful is like the existence of a rock with another rock? They can't think about comparison. I don't know. It's just a really interesting thought experiment, really. All right, enough of this. I'll get into the second half, which is talking about like what in the world. Why are there so many people here, and what are you guys all doing here on today? Like, what is today? Why is it so significant, right? So, it's the 15th day of the 7th month on the lunar calendar. It's basically like almost like Parents' Day, right? Or like, well, I gotta figure out that word. But, so for the kids who are wondering, like, why are my parents driving me to temple on this day, and for what reason? It goes back to an ancient legend, right? Of this wicked lady, right? Wicked lady. She never did anything for anybody, right? Super selfish. Whenever beggars came to her house, she would scream at them, drive them from the house, right? And you know, like back in the day, people were working on rice fields and stuff. She'll be like, I'm gonna mess up their rice paddies. And she like stepped on their rice paddies. And you know, whenever like monks and nuns were praying, she would like try to interrupt their prayer. And the last thing she did, super insidious, in her food offerings, she put meat inside her food offerings and tried to offer it to the monks to eat, right? Like, big no-no, they're like vegetarians. So what's she doing? Anyway, wicked lady, and of course, because of karma and stuff, after death, according to this legend, she was sent to hell. That's right? Just to pay for all of her evil deeds. And so there's like a lot of descriptions in how she was like on a bed of spikes and nails, and she has to hold a bucket of blood over her head. And she was like constantly starving because the food that anytime she tried to put food in her mouth, it turned into fire instantly, right? So this is the legend. And so her son, went down to hell to look for his mom and saw that she was suffering. So he asked the Buddha, hey, well, he didn't say hey, but he's like, how can I help my mom? And so the Buddha said, hey, you can arrange a ceremony, and on that day, you can have your mom's sentence like reduced with prayers and givings and offering. And so it is on this day. And so, like, when that day arrived, this monk like set up the altar and he prayed, and you know, it wasn't on just the son's part, the monk's part, it's also on the mom's part. Like, she began to understand, like, oh, what it meant to be hungry, what it meant to suffer pain, and she began to repent, you know, and like develop really like empathy and compassion. And so she changed her like evil nature, and so when the heavens saw that that this monk was super pious to his mom, like super loyal and tried to help her out as much as she can, they allowed him to bring his mom out of hell. And so this is like the whole point of like today's ceremony. So on this day, a lot of, especially in the Vietnamese tradition, Vietnamese people, they hold the ceremony to like ask the Buddha to like bless their parents, whether they're alive or dead, and to protect them when they've like passed away, right? It's this idea that like we as children owe like this immeasurable debt to our parents. And it's something that's impossible to pay off, and you have no idea how much like effort that your parents put into raising you until you become a parent yourself, right? So that's what they say. Yeah, and so also connecting this like ceremony, right? this entire ceremony is about being grateful, right, to your parents. And to connect this idea of gratitude, like how do you develop gratitude? Obviously, for some things that's easy. But if you go back to one of the 3 Dharma seals that I was talking about earlier about impermanence, think very carefully. Your parents will not be there for you forever, right? One day they will pass away, and it's slightly morbid. But if you really hone in on this concept of impermanence, you know this to be true. The best part about this, though, is that you realize this guy now. And so you're actually able to be more grateful for your parents now, and you enjoy your time and their presence, right, at this very moment. And so, yeah, and I mean, I'll close with this very, very quick story that my mom told me in the car ride here. Story goes like this. This guy, right, it's like Mother's Day, so he's like gonna order flowers for his mom, who lives in New Jersey, and so he's about to order flowers for his mom for Mother's Day, and have it delivered. And then he sees this girl crying. And he goes up to the girl and he's like, "Why are you crying, little girl?" And she's like, "Oh, I only have $2. And I can't buy any flowers for her mom, it's Mother's Day." And he's like, "All right, how much is it?" She's like, "Oh, it's $5. And he's like, "Okay, well, don't worry about it, I'll get you the flowers, okay?" So he buys her the flowers, and great. And so he's like about to drive home, and then he sees this girl walking a particular path. And he's like, "Oh, if you're heading there, I'll take you with me, because I'm driving down there anyway." So he ends up driving her, and she's like, "Oh," driving her for a bit, and then she tells him, "Oh, here's my stop." And he's like, "This is your stop?" And she's like, "Yeah." Her stop was actually a cemetery, and she came to lay the flowers on her mom's tomb. And then it was only then that he realized, oh man, this girl is so like pious. She, even though her mom's dead, she's like giving flowers to her mom. And so at that point he realized, oh man, I need to like deliver these flowers to my parents myself, right? To my mom myself. And so that's like a little like story for you guys as well. Like today is a day of gratitude for your parents. Know that like, you know, they go through tremendous sacrifice, and that to honor them and to respect them, you hold that thought in your head, okay? All right, well, that's the end of this lecture. Thank you, and then keep in mind that I come and lecture in English every first 2 Sundays of the month. Thank you.